Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Big Blue Sports. I'm your host, Matt Volts, a junior here at SUNY Fredonia. Had to turn my headphones up for a second. Got a lot to talk about today, some Fredonia sports, including a big win from the women's lacrosse team, as well as some Sabres updates and the Bandits as well. The Sabres, of course, winding down towards the end of the season, and believe it or not, somehow are still mathematically able to make the playoffs. Are they going to? Probably not, but it's still possible. So we'll see what happens there, as well as, of course, the Bandits trying to rebound from their loss to Vancouver on Saturday, and a preview of the upcoming men's and women's NCAA Final Fours. Of course, my Auburn Tigers are in the Final Four as well, and the women's Final Four, which is the women's Final Four is tomorrow, the men's Final Four on Saturday, women's national championship game on Sunday, and then the men's championship game on Monday night. The women's Final Four, of course, UCLA versus UConn, and South Carolina taking on Texas. The men's Final Four, Florida against my favorite team, the Auburn Tigers, and Duke against Houston. All number one seeds in the men's Final Four. The women's Final Four, you've got three number one seeds with UCLA, South Carolina, and Texas, and UConn as a 2 seed after UConn beat the number one seed in their region, USC, in the Elite Eight. Of course, USC sort of dealt a very difficult hand when Juju Watkins went down with a season-ending injury. But first, we'll talk about Fredonia sports. So the women's lacrosse team is back over 500. They are sitting at 6-5 on the season as they get set to play some of their first SUNYAC games. They haven't played many SUNYAC games. They've only played 3 and are 1-2 so far in conference play. It is all SUNYAC opponents from here on out. 6 games left on the regular season schedule, 3 at home, 3 on the road. In fact, the next 3 at home, and then the last 3 all on the road going into the SUNYAC playoffs. Of course, they had their 2 games down in Puerto Rico and their non-conference games that got them to a 4-1 start before that trip. So since we last spoke, which was last Thursday, the team was sitting at 5-4. Last Saturday, they lost at home to New Paltz 17-10. Yesterday at Hilbert, a game that was a very, very close 20-0 win for Fredonia. Of course, I say close sarcastically. The Blue Devils jumped ahead. Fredonia jumped ahead 9-0. They led 9-0 at the end of the first quarter. It was 14-0 at halftime. Fredonia just very much pulling away. Kaylin Corrales with 4 goals for the Blue Devils. Fredonia just pulling away, jumping ahead. They beat Hilbert 20-0, 6-5 on the season. Next 3 games all at home, then their last 3 on the road. They are at home on Saturday at noon for a conference matchup with SUNY Canton. Of course, Canton newly into the conference this year. Baseball also is a team that is over 500. They're currently sitting at 8-6, even though they lost their last 2. A doubleheader against Oswego on Friday. They had a 3-game series, 3 games in 2 days. On Thursday last week, beating Oswego 5-3. The first game of the doubleheader did not go so well for the Blue Devils. They lost that game 20-1. And then on Friday, a closer game, but still fell by a final score of 8-6. Today, they were slated to be at home for a 3-game series that was going to get started at 2 p.m. That series, they were going to be home against Cortland. That series has been moved to Cortland because of some weather, very high winds here in Fredonia, as well as some thunderstorms yesterday. There was a really unbelievably loud crack of thunder at 3:30 in the morning. And I'm not sure if anyone else experienced this. I was talking with our WCVF program director, Izzy, earlier about it, and we both at 3:30 in the morning, there was such a loud crack of thunder. It woke me up from the dead of sleep. And it felt like it shook the house. I woke up, I was like, that hit something on campus. There's no way that didn't hit something on campus. But yeah, it was rather loud. So that series has been moved to Cortland. Fredonia still is the official home team. It'll just be played at Cortland. And those 3 games today at 2 o'clock, the standalone game, and then a doubleheader tomorrow starting at noon. They're on the road next week for some non-conference matchups at Penn State Barron at 4 o'clock on Monday, and then a doubleheader at Hilbert next week, Tuesday. They return home a week from tomorrow for a 3-game series, 3 p.m. on Friday, and a doubleheader starting at noon on Saturday against SUNY Canton. Softball has had a difficult start to their season. They have not played any conference games yet. They are off to a 2-10 start. Of course, they began the Florida trip 0-10 and then won their last 2 games. Their first game, what was supposed to be their first game after Florida, a doubleheader at Hilbert on Tuesday. That was postponed due to weather. They are slated to be back in action tomorrow with a doubleheader at home against conference rival Morrisville starting at 3 p.m. And it is mostly conference opponents from here on out. They kind of intersperse some non-conference in there as well, but it's mostly non-conference opponents and all doubleheaders, at least currently on the schedule from here on out. The outdoor track and field season has started. Of course, it is getting ready to start, I should say. This weekend, starting tomorrow, the first meets of the outdoor season at Geneseo. They will start tomorrow and then go through Saturday as well. 4 meets on the schedule this weekend at Geneseo. Friday, April 11th at the University of Rochester. Friday, April 18th and Saturday the 19th at Christopher Newport University. And Friday, April 25th and Saturday the 26th at St. John Fisher up in Rochester. And then the SUNYAC Championships will be hosted Friday, May 2nd and Saturday, May 3rd at SUNY Cortland. So good luck to them as they begin their outdoor season. And it's a positive start so far for a handful of teams, of course, to see baseball and lacrosse both above 500 is a positive sign. The women's tennis spring season also getting closer to beginning. Of course, they are mostly a fall sport, but they do play some games in the spring as well. And this year they've got 2 games on the schedule. Saturday, April 12th, a 1 p.m. matchup at Nazareth. And Saturday, April 19th, a 1 p.m. matchup at Brockport. And then the SUNYAC Championships hosted by Cortland starting Friday, April 25th and running through Saturday, the 26th. So that is a look at your Fredonia sports. And, of course, we'll see how things progress with them throughout the season. Right now, I'm going to take a quick break and come back and talk about the Buffalo Bandits' loss to Vancouver on Saturday, as well as what the rest of their regular season is shaping out to look like. So thanks for joining me this afternoon to listen to Big Blue Sports on WCVF 88.9 FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. And welcome back to Big Blue Sports. Before we move on, are you struggling to find that apple a day to keep the doctor away? A SNAPS, aka Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program representative, will be available to help with your needs on Tuesday, May 6th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Find the help you need at the Williams Center G135, the Help Hub Info Desk. So the Bandits are coming off of their second straight 1-goal loss, a game I was at, losing 13-12 to the Vancouver Warriors. And this was a game that Buffalo definitely had their chances in, but were not able to capitalize. Vancouver jumped ahead early as they got off to a 4-2 lead. One of the things that I noticed is that some of the Bandits' star players really didn't have that same go that they've had in previous games. So Vancouver jumps out to a 1-0 lead just over a minute into the game. Kyle Buchanan very quickly answers to tie the game for Buffalo. And then on Buffalo's next possession, Dane Smith scores to give the Bandits a 2-1 lead. And I think everyone in the building is thinking, all right, here we go. Then Vancouver fights back. The Warriors go on a 3-goal run over the next 3 or so minutes to take a 4-2 lead before Tehoka Nanticoke answers with about 8 minutes left in the first quarter. End of the first, Vancouver 4, Buffalo 3. Christian Del Bianco in this game showed why he is maybe the best goaltender in the NLL right now. He had a remarkable game and really just stuffed the Bandits on a handful of different occasions. So in the second quarter, the Bandits get a power play very early, and Chase Frazier cashes in to tie the game at 4. Now, this is where Buffalo's bad habit of getting in the box too much causes some issues. So Nick Weiss, of course, the Bandits' veteran alternate captain, he gets called for boarding on a late blindside hit that, to be completely honest, could have gotten him thrown out of the game. And I don't think it would have been anything too crazy for him to have been ejected. He wasn't thrown out. It was a 5-minute penalty, but Vancouver cashes in both times. Of course, in lacrosse, of course, for hockey, you can score as many times as you want. Lacrosse, you get 2, and then that's the end of the power play. And they cashed in both times with 2 power play goals to take a 6-4 lead. Also scored one near the end of the half. And at the end of the first half, Vancouver led Buffalo 7-4. And it just, again, the Bandits' offense just did not have the same juice in this first half. Christian Del Bianco was remarkable in net for Vancouver. And it seemed like it was going to be tricky for the Bandits to cash in on a goaltender who was playing at such a high level. Early in the third quarter, Ian McKay scores a power play goal about a minute and a half in to cut the Vancouver lead to 7-5. But then the Warriors answer back. This was a common theme so much in this game that the Bandits would score and Vancouver would just answer right back. But Buffalo answers back this time. They get a couple of goals, a transition goal from Dylan Robinson, as well as Ian McKay's second of the game, cuts the Vancouver lead to 1. It's now 8-7. So the two teams go back and forth. Vancouver gets one late in the third quarter to regain their lead to 2. And then Kyle Buchanan scores his second of the game just over a minute to go in the third quarter. Going into the fourth, it's Vancouver 9 and Buffalo 8. In the fourth quarter, the Bandits early on look like they're going to take this one. Nick Weiss scores to tie the game, and I want to mention that Nick Weiss has, in my opinion, maybe the best goal song in the entire league. His goal song is Friends in Low Places by Garth Brooks, which is like just awesome. So he ties the game, and then a few minutes later, Josh Byrne remembers that he hasn't scored a goal yet in this game. So Byrne scores with 9.5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter to give the Bandits their first lead since the first quarter when they led 2-1. And then realizing that that was only his first goal, Byrne responds just 29 seconds later with his second, and the Bandits lead 11-9. But this is where the wheels sort of start to come off for Buffalo. Byrne scores that goal to put him up by 2. Vancouver very quickly answers back with 1 to cut it to 1. Then another face-off loss, another possession, another goal for Vancouver. So they tie the game at 11. Bandits again find themselves in the penalty box. Dylan Robinson takes a 5-minute penalty for an illegal cross-check, and they cash in. They cash in both times, actually. They get 2, both on the power play. So now they're up 13-11. Again, Buffalo, with 2 major penalties, Buffalo gave up 4 goals. They lost this game by 1. So that's the difference in the game. 3.5 to go. Ian McKay finishes off the hat trick. That put McKay at 30 goals on the season, which is second on the team behind only Josh Byrne with 37. It's remarkable, his offense this year. So the Bandits are down by 1. They had a few opportunities. Last possession of the game, it's Buffalo's ball. They got 4 shots off. 3 of them were stopped by Del Bianco, and 1 of them was blocked in front. Game over. Warriors win it 13-12. Bandits have lost 2 in a row. These games are, it's hard because you can't really say like, oh, you know, you're going to lose so many games and you guys are going to fall apart. The Bandits are already locked up into the playoffs. They are tied with the Saskatchewan Rush for the best record in the league at 11-4. They have 3 games left on the schedule, 2 on the road and 1 at home. All the Bandits need to do to lock up at least 1 home playoff game is win 1 of their final 3. That's all they've needed the last 2 games. So all they got to do, the magic number is 1. They win 1 more game, and they're at least getting a home playoff game. Now, you win a few more games, you win out, and because, of course, the Bandits, remember, do have the tiebreaker over the Saskatchewan Rush because they beat the Rush up in Canada earlier this year. And if these two teams finish with the same record, then Buffalo has the tiebreaker. So all that needs to be done is for Buffalo to finish with a better record or the same record as the Rush. If they do that and, Halifax doesn't go on some sort of crazy, insane run, if the Bandits win 2 of their last 3, they don't even have to worry about Halifax at all because the best that Halifax can get to would be 12-6. That would be the best that the Thunderbirds could get to. Then you've got Rochester at 9-7. Best they could do is 11-7, and the Bandits have the tiebreaker over Rochester. Georgia is a different case. Georgia is 8-7. They could get to 11-7, and the Bandits and Swarm play in the last game of the season. The middle of the standings in the NLL are just such a colossal mess. You've got Buffalo and Saskatchewan tied for the best record in the league at 11-4. Then you got the Halifax Thunderbirds at 9-6, the Rochester Nighthawks at 9-7. Then you have 4 teams, the Georgia Swarm, Colorado Mammoth, Vancouver Warriors, and San Diego Seals, all with 8-7 records. Then the Calgary Roughnecks and Ottawa Black Bears at 7-8. The Albany Firewolves 6-9. The Toronto Rock 5-9. The Philadelphia Wings 5-10. And the lowly Las Vegas Desert Dogs, who have already been eliminated from the playoffs at 3-12. Buffalo and Saskatchewan are the only teams who have clinched playoff spots so far. And remember, the Bandits have not had a season in which they didn't reach the NLL finals since 2018. Of course, 2019, they went to the finals and lost to the Calgary Roughnecks. 2020, the season was halted because of COVID and the rest of it wasn't played. And the 2021 season was not played entirely because of COVID. 2022, they went to the finals and lost to the Colorado Mammoth. 2023, they beat Colorado in the finals. And then last year, beating Albany in the finals to win their second straight championship. So we'll take a look at the rest of the season schedule for the Bandits. They've got 3 games left. They're on the road this weekend on Saturday, a 9 p.m. start against the Colorado Mammoth out in Denver. So again, that's a team that is fighting for a playoff spot. All 3 of the Bandits' remaining games are against teams who are currently in playoff spots. So they are at Colorado on Saturday. Next Saturday, April the 12th, their final home game of the regular season at 7:30 p.m. as they take on the Halifax Thunderbirds. And they finish the regular season on Saturday, April 19th at 7:30 p.m. down in Georgia against the Swarm. So the rest of the way, you've got tough teams. And one of the other major things that I wanted to mention was how the face-off dot, the Bandits have just been Connor Farrell got kind of shredded at the face-off dot on Saturday against Vancouver. And I think that's something that needs to be looked at. The number one issue with the Buffalo Bandits, the number one overall top of the list issue, is the fact that they have really struggled to stay out of the penalty box. They've got to be, I don't know the exact number, but they've got to be one of the most penalized teams in the National Lacrosse League. They go to the box an awful lot. They usually take at least one major penalty like per game. They had 2 on Saturday against Vancouver. And you got to clean that up. I mean, that really wasn't the case for them last year. But I made a point as I was hosting Sports Hour over at WNYF on Tuesday night. I made a point to my co-analyst, Lily Hauer, and I said, okay, think back to last year. The Bandits lost an overtime game on the road in the middle of the season. It was in March, and it was a really bad loss. But that fueled them to go forward, and the Bandits did not lose a single game after that point. That loss was to the Vancouver Warriors last year. So I'm not saying history is going to repeat itself, but the biggest thing that I think we need to keep in mind is that the sky is not exactly falling here. I think, yes, the Bandits have not played up to the level we were hoping the last couple of games. And that even goes back to their last win, that game on March 21st against the Las Vegas Desert Dogs, which they won at home 13-10. That game, the Bandits scored 8 goals in the first quarter. They were up 8-0. And they were outscored 10-5 the rest of the way by the worst team in the league. So, there are some concerns. The level of confidence that I have in the Bandits above other teams is so funny, because if this was the Bills or if it was the Sabres, I would be saying like, oh God, they're going to find a way to blow it. They're going to fall apart. The Bandits, because they've won championships the last 2 years and 6 in their history, it's much easier to say, all right, they're not playing as well right now. They'll figure it out. That's what they did last year. I mean, the Bandits were a team that was very much in the middle of the pack, on the verge of not making the playoffs. You might forget that they were the number 4 seed in the playoffs last year. They were at home in their quarterfinal game against Georgia, which they won in overtime, which I would say is easily the most nerve-wracking Buffalo sports moment that I've ever witnessed in person. But there was that last year, and then they had to go on the road to play Toronto in the semifinal, and they had to go on the road to play Albany in the final as well. But they swept those games, so they clinched those series at home. So I think, yeah, I'm not really too worried. I think there are concerns, but I don't think they're glaring enough to the point where I'm going to be like, we're in real trouble. We're not going to win the championship. We're not going to three-peat. I really, to be completely honest, I still feel very good about this team's chances to go and win a 3rd straight championship. There are teams that make me nervous, for sure. Like, I'll say San Diego, the way they played against Buffalo early in the season. I'd say the Seals make me nervous. Vancouver makes me nervous because of Christian Del Bianco in net. You might get a draw against one of those teams in the first round. What if they draw Calgary in round 1 and you're facing Nick Rose in a 1-game playoff, So there's teams that I'm nervous about, but all in all, I think Buffalo still absolutely has what it takes to go and win a 3rd straight championship. So I'm going to take a short break. When I come back, we're going to talk about the rest of the Sabres season, how, yes, indeed, somehow they still have a mathematical shot at making the playoffs. We'll take a look at how close they are. When I come back, you're listening to Big Blue Sports on WCVF 88.9 FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. And welcome back to Big Blue Sports on WCVF 88.9 FM. So I'm going to say something that's going to sound very difficult to believe. The Buffalo Sabres still have a mathematical possibility of making the playoffs. Now, I preface that by saying possibility, because I don't know. I don't think they're going to. So in their most recent game on Tuesday night, the Sabres went up to Ottawa and beat the Ottawa Senators 5-2, completing a season sweep. They played them 4 times back on November 5th in Buffalo, a 5-1 win for the Sabres. January 9th, a 4-0 shutout win in Ottawa. March 25th at home, a 3-2 win, which I was at. And, of course, this game on Tuesday, a 5-2 win up in Ottawa. This was the second straight time where the Sabres played Ottawa when I was like, okay, Buffalo honestly did not deserve to win this game, but they somehow did. The Sabres were outshot in this game 35-22. They were outhit 25-13. They had twice as many penalty minutes, 12-6, and Ottawa won nearly 61% of faceoffs. Now, given that information, who do you think won this game 5-2? Yeah, you would think not Buffalo, but the Sabres still won. James Reimer has been in net he's been outperforming Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen for the last 2 weeks, and he's been fantastic. He's been absolutely terrific. The Sabres have won, what are we at in the schedule? They've won 5 of their last 6 games, which is keeping in tradition. They've won 5 of their last 6, and I might add that James Reimer was in net for all of the wins, and UPL was in net for the 1 loss. So Luukkonen has been badly outplayed, and Reimer has honestly been great. He's been fantastic. I mean, he stopped 33 of 35 shots and earned the game's first star. So in the game on Tuesday, Alex Tuch got it started midway through the first period. His 32nd of the year assist from Matthias Samuelsson and Jason Zucker. Buffalo up 1-0. Just a couple of minutes after that, Rasmus Dahlin scores his 14th of the year, assist from Jack Quinn and Matthias Samuelsson. Sabres lead 2-0 after 1. It would be the same score until midway through the second period when Tage Thompson would bury his 39th of the year assist from Peterka and Dahlin. It's 3-0 Buffalo. Now, Ottawa would answer back fairly quickly on this goal. About just a minute and 10 seconds later, Claude Giroux would get Ottawa on the board with his 15th of the year assist from Tyler Kleven and the goaltender, Linus Ullmark, former Sabres goaltender, of course. 3-1 Buffalo at the end of the second period. In the third, almost exactly halfway through the third period, Peyton Krebs picks off a Dylan Cousins pass and on a breakaway buries one past Ullmark. I just mentioned 3 former Sabres in that sentence. Buffalo jumps ahead 4-1. Ottawa, however, answers back very quickly. Less than a minute later, Jake Sanderson, son of former Sabre Jeff Sanderson, scores his 9th of the year assist from Michael Amadio and Artem Zub. Buffalo still leads at 4-2, and then Ryan McLeod would bury an empty netter with 2.5 minutes to go. Assist from Tuch and Connor Clifton. Buffalo wins it 5-2. The craziest part about this is, look at where Buffalo is in the standings. Now let's look at their offense. So Tage Thompson is at 39 goals. He's going to be well over 40 when the season ends. And he'll be well over 40 when this season ends. The Sabres have 8 games left. Alex Tuch is sitting at 32. He's a 30-goal scorer. I imagine he might be around the 35 mark-ish. You've got Ryan McLeod is at 19. He only needs 1 more to get to 20. And it's just let's do that. Well, let's take a look at the goal scoring numbers for the Buffalo Sabres and talk about what really is and isn't the issue here. So Tage Thompson is at 39 goals. Of course, you have Alex Tuch at 32. JJ Peterka at 23, so Peterka is, going to hit the 25-goal mark. You've got Jason Zucker and Ryan McLeod both at 19. They'll be 20-goal scorers. Rasmus Dahlin, Jack Quinn, and Yuri Kulik at 14. The way Quinn's been playing, he could absolutely get to 20 before this season is over. Then you've also got, and the next leading scorer is Dylan Cousins at 11, but it's so interesting that in a year where we're going to have a 40-goal scorer in Tage Thompson, a 30-plus goal scorer in Alex Tuch, and you'll have Peterka, Zucker, and McLeod will all be over 20 goals, and Jack Quinn may get close, and Yuri Kulik honestly could get close too. The fact that the Sabres were in dead last in their division until Tuesday is unreal. And to me, I think it proves the offense isn't the problem. Because let's take a look at goaltending. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, of course, was re-signed to a big contract. Luukkonen has played 52 games this year. He is 23-23-4. A 3.23 goals against average and an 885 save percentage. Goals against average, sometimes it can be misleading. If you have a good save percentage and a bad goals against average, a lot of times it's okay. You're a good goalie. You're just facing a lot of shots. For Luukkonen, on the other hand, not so much. His save percentage at 885 is horrendous. It's really bad. If I'm if I'm being completely honest, it's like that's really bad. James Reimer, on the other hand, Reimer has played in 17 games. Now, he did play 2 of those games early in the season with the Anaheim Ducks. Reimer's overall record is 7-6-2, a 281 goals against average, and a 905 save percentage. From a backup goaltender, those are solid numbers. I mean, that's kind of ideally what you're looking for a backup goaltender. That's not an issue. Luukkonen has not played well this year, and I like him. I like UPL. He hasn't been good this year. I don't think it's all his fault. I think the defense has been horrific. Outside of Dahlin and sometimes Power, the defense, and I include Byram in that. Byram, I don't think has been very good this year. You've got Samuelsson, who's supposed to be a stay-at-home defenseman and doesn't defend. You had Yoki Haru, who I think was one of the worst defensemen in the NHL. You had, Jacob Bryson, who I think is a fine 7th defenseman, but they're slotting him into higher roles than that. Connor Clifton, same thing. I think Connor Clifton would be a very solid 3rd-pairing defenseman, and they're slotting him into the top 4, which is not working. I think the Sabres, the biggest 2 needs are defensive depth, and you need Luukkonen to go out and play well. Devin Levi, I'm keeping Levi in Rochester until he is fully ready to go. I am not rushing him to the NHL. He played 9 games this year and looked really rough. I am not rushing Levi to the NHL whatsoever. He can stay in Rochester until he is fully ready to go, because I think Devin Levi really does have the hallmarks of someone who could potentially be an elite goalie in the NHL. I think Levi is a very good goaltender, and I think that he absolutely could be I think he could be excellent for the Sabres in a few years. In my view, so we'll look at the rest of the schedule. In my view, that's where we're at. That's, I think, how it shapes out. Let's take a look at the rest of the season schedule. So the Sabres have 8 games left. They've got 2 this weekend. They are at home against the Tampa Bay Lightning at 7 p.m. on Saturday. Sunday at 6 p.m., they are at home against the Boston Bruins. That game is important because Boston is the team that is now below Buffalo and sitting in dead last in the Atlantic. Next week, Tuesday, April 8th, at home against the Carolina Hurricanes, 7 p.m. Thursday, April 10th, at Columbus, 7 p.m. Saturday, the 12th, at Florida at 6 p.m. Sunday, the 13th, at Tampa Bay at 6 p.m. And then their last 2 games, both at home. Tuesday, April 15th, at home against the Toronto Maple Leafs at 7 p.m. And they finish the regular season on Thursday, April 17th, at home against the Philadelphia Flyers at 7 p.m. So there's some teams that are already locked into playoff spots, like Tampa Bay, Carolina, Florida, and Toronto are all playoff teams. Toronto actually clinched their playoff spot last night. Boston is a team that is below you in the standings, and Columbus and Philadelphia are 2 of the teams that the Sabres are chasing, because right now they're chasing everyone but Boston. So we'll look at the standings. Buffalo currently 7th in the Atlantic, 32, 36, and 6 with 70 points. They have 8 games left to play. In the wild card standings, the 2 teams are, of course, the teams in the Atlantic right now. You've got Toronto with 96 points. They have clinched a playoff spot. You've got the Tampa Bay Lightning with 93 and the Florida Panthers with 92. In the Metro, the Washington Capitals, the current best team in the Eastern Conference with 105 points. They've clinched a playoff spot. And the Carolina Hurricanes sitting in second with 96. They've also clinched a playoff spot as well. And then the New Jersey Devils sitting in third with 87 points. The wildcard teams right now, the top wildcard team, the Ottawa Senators with 84 points. And the last team in right now is the Montreal Canadiens with 79 points. And the funniest thing to me is that the Sabres have more regulation wins and a better goal differential than the Montreal Canadiens do, yet the Canadiens are 9 points ahead of them and in a wild card spot. So the other teams chasing after for the playoffs, and I should say how many games each team has to go. So Ottawa's in the first spot. They've got 84 points with 8 games left. Then Montreal is at 79 points. They also have 8 games left. The first team out right now is the New York Rangers. They also have 79 points. They have 7 games left. Then you have the Columbus Blue Jackets at 77 points. The Blue Jackets have 9 games left. The Detroit Red Wings at 75 points with 8 games left. The New York Islanders, 74 points, 8 games left. The Pittsburgh Penguins, 71 points with 7 games left. The Philadelphia Flyers, 71 points with 6 games left. The Buffalo Sabres, 70 points with 8 games left. And then in last place, the Boston Bruins, 69 points with 7 games left to play. So Buffalo is only 1 point behind both Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. And the Sabres have 1 more game to play than the Penguins and 2 more games to play than the Flyers. And they do play against the Flyers in the last game of the regular season. They are 4 points back of the Islanders with the same number of games left. 5 points back of the Red Wings, same number of games left. 7 points back of Columbus. The Blue Jackets have 1 more game than the Sabres, and these 2 teams do play in Columbus next Thursday. As far as the Rangers, 9 points back. The Sabres have 1 more game. Montreal in the last wildcard spot. Same number of games left to play. Buffalo is 9 points back. Could the Sabres make the playoffs? Mathematically, yes, they could still make the playoffs. Are they going to? No, almost definitely not. And we're going to be sitting here for the 14th straight year with no playoffs. But we'll see how that shapes out. So I'm going to take a quick break and then finish off the show today previewing this weekend's Final Four, as well as the national championship games for men's and women's basketball on Sunday and Monday night. Thanks for tuning in this afternoon to, I pressed the button a little bit too early there. I guess my volume was already playing. Thanks for tuning in this afternoon to Big Blue Sports Podcast here on WCBF 88.9 FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. And welcome back to Big Blue Sports. So for the last 10-ish minutes of our show this afternoon, we're going to be previewing this weekend's Final Four in both the men's and women's tournaments. So a lot has been made about the quote-unquote all chalk Final Four. As in the men's tournament, this is the first time since 2008 that all 4 number 1 seeds have made it to the Final Four. Now, I talked about my bracket on the show last week, and we took some hits in the Sweet 16 and Elite 8. I did still have 2 of my Final Four teams in it with Auburn and Duke. I had Florida losing to Texas Tech in the Elite 8. And I had Houston losing to Tennessee in the Elite 8. So every single game that I've gotten wrong, the team that won, I had them losing. Every single time I got a game wrong, the team that I picked, I had them losing in the next round anyways. That happened the entirety of the tournament. So in my national champion pick, Auburn is still in it. So far, bracket is looking okay. So the women's Final Four is tomorrow night. The men's Final Four Saturday night. Women's national championship is on Sunday. Men's national championship on Monday night, which is something I will never understand about the NCAA is why they put their championships on Monday nights, because they do the same thing for college football. They play it at like 9 p.m. on a Monday night, and it's ridiculous. But anyways, so the women's Final Four, the first game at 7 p.m., a battle of 2 number 1 seeds, South Carolina and Texas. That tipping off at 7 p.m. on ESPN tomorrow night. And then at 9 p.m., number 1 seed UCLA takes on Paige Beckers and 2 seed UConn at 9 p.m. So that the Final Four matchup. Then the men's Final Four on Saturday at 6:09. They always get so weird and specific with these starting times. 6:09 p.m. on CBS, the first battle of the number 1 seeds as Auburn takes on Florida. And the other semifinal at 8:49 on CBS is Duke versus Houston. And the women's championship game, I got to look and see what time the championship game is. So the women's championship game is at 3 p.m. on Sunday afternoon on ABC and ESPN. And the men's national championship game, they moved it just a little bit later this year. It's not ridiculous. It's not as ridiculously late. It's at 8:50 on CBS. It used to tip at like 9:30, which was absolutely ridiculous. So my picks going in the women's bracket, I mean, it's always hard to bet against UConn. And they got here. They ended up beating the other number one seed, USC. Of course, as I mentioned, they lost Juju Watkins to a season-ending injury. I think that, Paige Beckers has shown how special of a player she is. I said this, I truly believe that there are women's basketball players that could play and thrive in the NBA. I really believe that. I think Caitlin Clark would play in the NBA. And I feel the same way about Paige Beckers. I think that she's that good that she could play at that level. I mean, these are players who are WNBA superstars and should be the faces of their respective leagues. But I think in the first semifinal, South Carolina and Texas, South Carolina is favored by 5.5 points. And ESPN's matchup predictor has South Carolina winning 62.4% of the time. These two teams did play back on March 9th in the SEC tournament, and South Carolina won that game 64-45. So my personal pick, it is so hard to bet against Dawn Staley in South Carolina this time of the year. I've got to go with the Gamecocks to advance to the championship game. And then UCLA against UConn. I know UConn is a 2 seed, but with Paige Beckers, I mean, every game they've won, every game UConn has won in this tournament has been an absolute blowout. I don't know how you could go with anyone else besides UConn. So I'm going with a UConn South Carolina national championship game, which would be fascinating to watch. It would be absolutely fascinating to watch. So we'll go to the championship game. South Carolina, a 1 seed versus UConn, a 2 seed. I'd be so curious to see what the line would be for that game. That's one that I think could go legitimately either way. I think both teams are absolute powerhouses. It feels like such a stereotypical basic answer to say that I think UConn is going to win the women's national championship. But it's Paige Beckers' senior year. I think she goes out with a bang, and UConn wins it. I think it will be a UConn versus South Carolina championship game, and I mean those are the two top programs in women's basketball, no question. So I think that UConn ends up winning that. We'll go to the men's tournament now. We'll pivot to the men's tournament. The Auburn and Florida game. Florida is favored by 2.5. I will say earlier this year, these two teams played, and Florida won. Florida handed Auburn one of their only losses of this season. The Tigers are an underdog, and it's unclear how their health comes into this. Of course, Janai Broome left their Elite Eight game against Michigan State with an injury. He did come back and play in that game. A lot of people, I think, are going to be picking Florida. Florida had to have a huge comeback to beat Texas Tech in the Elite Eight. I have to continue with my bracket and maybe go with a little bit of a homer pick. I've got to go with the Auburn Tigers to beat Florida and advance to the championship game. The other semifinal, Duke versus Houston. Duke is favored by 4.5 points, of course, with Cooper Flagg taking on LJ Cryer. Duke's favor. Duke, the matchup predictor, says 54% in favor of Duke. And I think the Blue Devils are a good team. However, I'm actually going to pick Houston in this game. I think that, Houston absolutely stone cold dominated Tennessee in the Elite Eight, held them to 15 points in the first half. Duke had an excellent defensive showing against a really hot shooting Alabama team in the Elite Eight as well. But I think this one goes to Houston. I think that it's going to be I think it'll be a really good game. We're going to have an awesome Final Four. These games, I know people are upset about it being all number 1 seeds, which I kind of understand, but it's going to be an elite Final Four. We're going to have some really, really good games. No question about it. So my prediction for the national championship game, Auburn versus Houston. And if I remember correctly, Chris LeGros from the Career Development Office and who teaches the bracketology course, this was his championship game pick, Auburn and Houston. I think it's a good pick. It's a matchup of teams that I have picked to win the championships the last few years, as I picked Auburn in 2022, Houston in 23, and then, of course, Auburn last year and this year as well. This would be a remarkable game. As an Auburn fan, would make me nervous. As an Auburn fan, I'm already nervous for Monday's game. But I'll let my homerism show just a little bit as I get ready to finish up the show. I'll let my homerism show. So the 4 teams in the Final Four. Houston won the national championship. Of course, their Phi Slamma Jamma team with Clyde Drexler and Hakeem Olajuwon back in the early 80s, right? Duke has won several national championships, most recently in 2015. Florida has also won championships. Florida won back-to-back in 2006 and 07, back when Billy Donovan was coaching them and they had Joakim Noah and all that. Auburn has never won the national championship. In fact, Auburn has never been to the championship game. They were here 6 years ago in 2019 as a number 5 seed. They played Virginia in the Final Four, and they were robbed in that game. A double dribble that should have been called on Virginia went uncalled, and a weak shooting foul was called on Auburn. Virginia got 3 shots at the line, made them all. I think this is their time. I really honestly think that this year is the Auburn Tigers' time. I think Auburn beats Florida. They face Houston in the championship game, and I think they win it. And I think the Auburn Tigers, at the end of the day, with Janai Broome, head of the NBA, Bruce Pearl holds up that national championship trophy high, and the Auburn Tigers are your national champions. And more importantly, the Auburn Tigers win a national championship before the Alabama Crimson Tide, which, of course, is maybe the most important part to loyal Auburn fans. So that'll do it for today's show. I want to thank all of you joining in and listening to this afternoon's show. We'll be back next week to talk about what will be a recap of the Final Four and championship games. Hopefully, I'll be in a celebratory mood, celebrating and cheering on Auburn's Final Four victory. And we'll talk, of course, about the Bandits and the Sabres as well. Local at 1 is next on WCVF. Thanks for tuning in this afternoon to Big Blue Sports Podcast on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. We'll catch you next week.